My extraordinary chosen one, you've been lied to, and the enemy used your own heart to do it. For years, you believed this pain, this waiting, this emotional torment was part of some divine twin flame journey. You told yourself that the separation was just a spiritual test, that the suffering was proof of love, that the constant longing, the rejection, the obsession were all signs of something sacred. But what if I told you it wasn't God? What if I told you this was never about union, but about spiritual paralysis? Right now, as you're watching this, you're standing at the edge of one of the biggest spiritual revelations of your life. Because the truth is, the enemy used this prophecy as a weapon to slow you down, block your growth, and keep you emotionally imprisoned. And you, my dear chosen one, you've been trapped for far too long. I need you to hear me, and I need you to stay until the end of this video, because what I'm about to reveal could be the key to unlocking years of emotional and spiritual bondage. The enemy knew your heart was pure. The enemy knew you would wait forever for someone you believed was your divine counterpart. And that's exactly why the enemy kept sending you false confirmations, fake signs, distorted dreams, all pointing you back to the same toxic cycle. You kept calling it love, but it was spiritual warfare disguised as destiny. And every day you stayed attached to this lie, you lost time, energy, and alignment with your real mission. This wasn't your twin flame. This was your spiritual delay wearing a familiar face. Before this video ends, I will expose exactly how the enemy used the twin flame prophecy to manipulate your emotions, sabotage your growth, and keep you trapped in a cycle of waiting and suffering. Most importantly, I will show you how the lie finally backfired, how this pain propelled you to awaken, and why your true destiny is finally revealing itself. Write in the comments, right now, I break the false prophecy. Let this be your first declaration of freedom. In addition to enjoying and liking this video, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. Do this right now to stay steadfast in the purpose and stay with me until the end. Because once you hear the truth, there is no going back to the illusion. You've been lied to, and the enemy used your deepest desire against you. For years, you held on to the belief that this pain you're feeling, this waiting, this emotional warfare, was all part of some sacred twin flame journey. You told yourself the suffering was divine preparation, that every rejection, every heartbreak, every unanswered prayer was God testing your patience for a love story written in the heavens. But let me tell you something, chosen one, that wasn't God. That was manipulation. That was spiritual warfare disguised as destiny. The enemy knew exactly how to package the lie so you'd hold on to it for dear life, even when it was breaking you inside. Because here's the truth most people won't admit. The enemy doesn't always use obvious weapons. Sometimes, the attack comes wrapped in hope, in longing, in the language of love and soul connection. The enemy knew that your heart was pure, that you believed in divine timing, that you were willing to wait, to pray, to fight for what you thought was your ordained partner. And while you were busy romanticizing your suffering, your spiritual growth was being paralyzed. Every time you stayed stuck in the cycle of waiting, the enemy won. Every time you postponed your purpose for the sake of union, the enemy laughed. And what's worse, the enemy didn't just rely on your emotions. It started sending signs, numbers, dreams, random coincidences that felt too specific to ignore. You saw 1111, 222, 555, and you took it as divine confirmation. Every time your phone buzzed with a random message, every time you dreamt of their face, every time you heard a song that reminded you of them, you thought it was the universe speaking. But what you didn't realize was that the enemy knows how to manipulate frequencies too. It knows how to counterfeit spiritual signals. It knows how to mimic divine timing, just long enough to keep you emotionally tied and spiritually stagnant. For years, you lived in emotional limbo, always waiting for a message, a sign, a breakthrough that never fully came. You told yourself that separation was necessary for growth, that the distance was temporary, that the pain was part of the divine process. And in doing that, you sacrificed your joy, your peace, and most importantly, your spiritual progress. You delayed your own healing because you were too afraid to let go of the fantasy. You allowed yourself to stay available, spiritually and emotionally, for someone who was never sent to complete you, but to distract you. And let's be honest, every time you tried to move forward, something pulled you back. A dream, a memory, a sudden wave of sadness that felt like it came out of nowhere. That wasn't love, chosen one. That was a spiritual hook. The enemy designed this cycle to keep you looping, healing for a week, then breaking down again, feeling strong for a month, then falling back into obsession. This was never about union. It was about delay, about keeping you too emotionally exhausted to focus on your real mission, about making sure you stayed off track, too busy chasing a false promise to walk in your true power. And the worst part? You started blaming yourself, thinking maybe you weren't doing enough inner work, maybe you weren't healing fast enough. Maybe the delays were your fault, your karma, your spiritual immaturity. But that was another layer of the trap. The enemy wanted you stuck in self-blame, because as long as you stayed focused on your flaws, you wouldn't realize the truth. The enemy had been orchestrating the entire illusion, feeding the fantasy, stretching the timeline, using your love for God and your belief in destiny as weapons against your own awakening. But here's what the enemy didn't expect. The same pain it used to manipulate you became the fire that awakened you. The same heartbreak that broke you became the force that pushed you deeper into prayer, deeper into healing, deeper into truth. The cycles that once kept you bound started to expose themselves for what they really were: spiritual distractions, emotional traps. And while the enemy was busy playing long games with your heart, God was building a warrior in secret. A version of you that could finally say, "Enough." You started noticing patterns you had ignored before. Every time you made a decision to heal, every time you began to step into your purpose, there was a sudden emotional pull, dragging you right back into that mental space of waiting and longing. It was like clockwork. The moment you started focusing on your goals, building new relationships, reconnecting with your faith, the dreams would start again. The memories would resurface. You'd see their name, their face, their birthday numbers showing up everywhere. And because your heart was still fragile, you believed it was a sign to hold on a little longer. But deep down, your spirit started whispering, "This isn't God." The emotional exhaustion became undeniable. You couldn't pray without thinking about them. You couldn't listen to music without being triggered. Every sermon, every motivational video, every prophetic word, somehow your mind twisted it back to being about them. That's how deep the programming ran. The enemy didn't just attack your feelings, it hijacked your interpretation of everything happening around you. You were spiritually manipulated to believe that God was orchestrating delays, when in reality, the delays were demonic interference designed to choke your destiny. And let's talk about the false confirmations. How many times did you get excited over a dream that felt too real to ignore? How many times did you see angel numbers, or receive random messages, or hear songs on the radio that seemed like they were speaking directly to your situation? The enemy played your hope like a puppet on strings, sending false signals at just the right moments to keep you hooked, feeding the illusion just enough to stop you from walking away completely. Every time you started to detach emotionally, the enemy sent another false sign to pull you back in. This was psychological warfare on a spiritual level. Meanwhile, your real mission sat waiting. Your true calling remained untouched. The projects God placed in your heart went unfinished. The people you were meant to serve, the lives you were meant to impact, the purpose you were born to fulfill, all of it stayed paused. Because your mental, emotional, and spiritual energy was being drained daily by a battle you weren't even meant to be fighting. You weren't called to chase a person. You were called to chase purpose. But how could you, when every ounce of your focus was trapped in a cycle of spiritual obsession disguised as love? And the longer it went on, the more your self-worth eroded. You started questioning your value, wondering why you weren't enough for this person to choose you. Why, no matter how much inner work you did, nothing changed. Why every time you felt progress, a new wave of longing would crash over you, undoing everything. You questioned if you were spiritually broken, if maybe this was your punishment for past mistakes. The enemy made you think the pain was proof of destiny, when in reality, it was proof of deception. But something shifted, slowly at first, then suddenly, with force. You stopped romanticizing the suffering. You began to see the connection for what it was: toxic, draining, manipulative. You realized that real divine love wouldn't leave you in cycles of anxiety and confusion. It wouldn't demand your peace as payment. And for the first time, you asked God a different question. Not, when will they come back? But, God, was this even from you? And that single question opened the floodgates of spiritual truth that had been waiting to reach you. That's when God started pulling back the veil. Memories became clearer. The manipulation became obvious. The patterns you once called tests of faith were exposed as attacks on your destiny. Every dream, every sign, every emotional trigger, you started tracing them back to their source. And what you saw shocked you. This wasn't just emotional confusion. This was a targeted, strategic, and deliberate attempt by the enemy to halt your spiritual growth, to waste your time, to exhaust your heart. But what the enemy didn't count on was your awakening. The inner battle that followed was unlike anything you've ever faced. Part of you wanted to hold on, afraid to let go of the dream you had nurtured for so long. Another part of you, the part that was waking up, started screaming for freedom. Nights were spent crying, questioning, bargaining with God. Mornings felt heavy, like you were carrying emotional chains that wouldn't break. The confusion was spiritual, emotional, and even physical. You felt tired all the time. Your focus was gone, and even small tasks felt overwhelming. This wasn't just heartbreak. It was spiritual warfare at its most deceptive level. And for the first time, you realized this wasn't about love anymore. This was about survival. Your prayers changed. Instead of asking God to reunite you with this person, you started asking for clarity, for truth, for peace. And slowly, the fog began to lift. God started showing you memories you had overlooked, conversations you had romanticized, now seen through a lens of reality. The manipulation became undeniable. The narcissistic patterns became obvious. The emotional inconsistencies, the spiritual confusion, all began to make sense. This wasn't your divine counterpart. This was a distraction sent by the enemy to keep you stuck in a holding pattern while your real destiny waited for you to wake up. The more you pulled away emotionally, the louder the spiritual attacks became. You started experiencing vivid dreams, sudden emotional waves, random intrusive thoughts that felt foreign to your own mind. This was the enemy's last attempt to pull you back in, to make you doubt your progress, to make you believe that walking away was a mistake. But you kept standing, you kept praying, you kept refusing to engage. And every time you chose silence over reaction, peace over obsession, discipline over longing, the grip began to loosen. The hold that connection had over your spirit started to crack. And then came the breaking point. That one day when you woke up and realized you didn't feel the pull anymore. The heaviness was gone. The emotional noise had stopped. The obsessive thoughts silent. For the first time in what felt like years, you could breathe without thinking of them. You could pray without their face invading your mind. You could dream without being dragged into another spiritual entanglement. And right then, you knew the enemy's plan had officially backfired. What was meant to destroy you only made you spiritually stronger. What the enemy never anticipated was that this pain would push you deeper into your relationship with God, that this heartbreak would sharpen your discernment like never before, that the emotional warfare would train you in spiritual discipline. You became more prayerful, more vigilant, more aware of spiritual manipulation. The very tactics that once worked on you now became obvious traps you could spot from miles away. You became a different person, more spiritually mature, more emotionally stable, more unshakable in your identity as a chosen one. The beautiful irony is, while the enemy was busy keeping you distracted with a false prophecy, God was secretly equipping you for your real assignment. Every tear became oil. Every breakdown became a lesson. Every lonely night became training ground for your resilience. And now, standing on the other side of this revelation, you're no longer a victim of emotional manipulation. You're a warrior with spiritual vision. You no longer crave a reunion. You crave your purpose. You no longer chase false connections. You chase alignment with God's will for your life. But let me warn you, this is the phase where the enemy may try one last time. Expect sudden messages, random dreams, unexpected triggers, people showing up out of nowhere to remind you of them. Understand, it's all noise, all bait, all last-ditch efforts to reopen a door that God has already closed. Your job now is to protect your peace, like your life depends on it, because spiritually, it does. This is where your consistency becomes your shield. You can't afford to play with fire anymore. Even entertaining one small thought about them is dangerous now. The enemy is banking on your curiosity, hoping that you'll just check their page, or wonder what they're thinking, or replay old conversations in your head. But you have to remember, every thought is a doorway. Every emotional reaction is a spiritual frequency the enemy can use to reopen that old cycle. This is not the time to reminisce. This is the time to reinforce your boundaries like never before. Speak life over yourself every morning. Declare your freedom out loud. And when those tempting thoughts come, shut them down immediately. Your mind is your battlefield now, and victory starts in your thought life. Rebuild your spiritual routine like your life depends on it, because spiritually, it does. Start your mornings with prayer and intention. Fill your atmosphere with worship, with affirmations, with scriptures that remind you who you are. Fast if you feel led. Do energy clearings over your space. Cut every remaining soul tie with authority. Don't leave even a crack open, because the enemy loves small openings. One emotional text, one pity-filled daydream, one phone call just to check in. That's all it takes to undo months of healing. Your job now is to close every spiritual portal for good. Starve the connection until it dies completely. And it will die if you stay disciplined. And let's talk about spiritual discernment. Not every dream is prophetic. Not every sign is divine. Not every coincidence is a message from God. The enemy can manipulate numbers, songs, even people, just to stir your emotions again. This is why your discernment needs to be sharper than ever. Test every spirit. Filter every sign. Ask God for confirmation, not just emotional validation. If the sign leads you back into confusion, anxiety, or longing for something that keeps you stagnant, it's not from God. The enemy knows how to counterfeit spiritual signals. Don't fall for it again. Stay rooted in truth, not feelings. Focus now on your purpose like never before. There's a reason your breakthrough came at this exact moment. Your next level of destiny is time-sensitive. The assignments waiting for you can't be delayed any longer. God didn't bring you this far just for emotional relief. He freed you to launch you, to push you into the fullness of your calling. Start that project. Apply for that opportunity. Heal that relationship with yourself. Dive into your spiritual gifts. Every day you move forward, you make it harder for the enemy to drag you backward. Purpose is your new obsession now, not people. And let's get real about your identity shift. You are not the same person you were when this cycle started. You're not the same emotionally fragile, spiritually blind version of yourself that the enemy used to play with. You're stronger, wiser, more spiritually mature. You can feel the difference in your energy. Your thoughts don't spiral like before. Your sleep feels deeper. Your mind feels clearer. Even the air around you feels lighter. That's not by accident. That's spiritual elevation manifesting in your physical reality. And the enemy hates it. You're now walking proof that spiritual cycles can break. That manipulation doesn't last forever. That even the strongest soul tie, when exposed to truth and discipline, will lose its power. Your testimony will become someone else's survival guide. Your healing will become a weapon against future deception. And every day you stay focused, you reinforce the spiritual wall that now protects you. Keep speaking life over yourself. Keep praying over your heart. Keep guarding your mind. The enemy may still whisper, but you're no longer listening. But hear me. There's still one more layer of defense you need to build. This is the time to start actively blessing your future. Speak into your next season. Prophesy over your purpose. Call forth divine connections that align with God's will, not counterfeit distractions. Declare that your time of waiting and spiritual delay is over, that you're stepping fully into alignment with God's timing, God's plan, and God's provision for your life. The best revenge against the enemy is thriving. And that's exactly what you're about to do. Start declaring over yourself, I am no longer available for spiritual distractions. Let those words become your new mantra. Every time an old memory tries to resurface, speak it out loud. Every time guilt whispers that you were too cold or too harsh, remind yourself why you had to let go. This wasn't just about feelings. This was about spiritual survival, about reclaiming years of lost focus, stolen energy, and delayed blessings. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your healing. Not to them, not to mutual friends, not even to yourself. You did what was necessary to protect your peace, and that alone makes you victorious. And let's be clear, this wasn't just a personal battle. This was a generational pattern-breaking moment. You weren't just fighting for yourself. You were fighting for every future version of you that will walk in freedom because of this decision. You were fighting for the next generation, for the people assigned to your voice, for the divine projects God has placed in your spirit. The enemy wasn't attacking your love life. The enemy was attacking your lineage, your purpose, your legacy. That's why the warfare was so intense. That's why the emotional loops felt endless. But you stood your ground. You endured. And now, you're walking out of the fire with more authority than ever before. This is where you pivot from healing to building. It's time to pour all that reclaimed energy into your destiny. Start mapping out your next steps. Write the book. Launch the business. Serve in your community. Grow your spiritual gifts. The enemy wasted enough of your time keeping you emotionally distracted. Now, it's your turn to take territory. Every day you invest in your purpose is a day the enemy loses ground. Stay focused. Stay productive. Stay anchored in the truth that your calling was never about chasing people. It was always about fulfilling your divine mission. But don't be surprised if the enemy tries a different approach now. It knows the emotional bait won't work anymore. So now, it may shift to subtle discouragement, whispering doubts like, maybe your best days already passed, or maybe you're too broken to fulfill your purpose. Recognize those lies for what they are. Last-ditch attempts to derail you. When those thoughts come, speak against them immediately. Declare, I am stronger than I've ever been. My best days are ahead. God's plan for my life is still unfolding. Let your words become your new spiritual weapon. Your mind, your mouth, and your energy field are now battlegrounds you control. And don't isolate yourself. This is the phase where you need community. Surround yourself with people who speak life over you. Watch content that uplifts your spirit. Listen to teachings that reinforce your identity as a chosen one. Isolation creates vulnerability, and vulnerability creates openings. Stay plugged into positive environments. Stay under spiritual covering. Stay connected to voices that remind you who you are when doubt tries to creep in. You've come too far to self-sabotage now. Your next level requires community, accountability, and daily spiritual reinforcement. This is your confirmation that the cycle is over. You're not in waiting mode anymore. You're not spiritually stuck. You're not emotionally enslaved to a false prophecy. You've crossed over into a new level of clarity, power, and purpose. The enemy tried to use love as a weapon, but God used the pain as a tool for your awakening. What you thought was a detour was actually divine training. You learned discernment. You learned emotional control. You learned how to hear God's voice through the noise of your feelings. And from this day forward, you'll never see that person, that connection, or that season the same way again. The illusion has been shattered, and the truth has set you free. Before you leave this video, I need you to make a public declaration in the comments. Right now, I break the cycle, and declare to the universe with conviction that you have ended the false cycle of manipulation. Your words have power. Your agreement with the truth will seal your breakthrough. And if this message is resonating with your soul, if you feel the liberation happening right now as you listen, please support our channel by liking this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, do so now and click the notification bell. And to all who have supported this mission through Buy Me a Coffee, I see you, I thank you, and I pray for increase and protection over your lives. Your support allows us to go deeper, create more, and reach further. If you feel guided to sow in this mission, the link is in the first pinned comment below. Before I go, I want to invite you to watch the next video that is playing on your screen right now. I promise the next one will take you even further in your healing and awakening. And now, it's your turn to live it. See you in the next victory. Keep going, and may God bless you.